Welcome back. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. It's a special edition of the program. We're coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja, where the Nigeria Economic Summit 2016 is actually happening with a theme Made in Nigeria. Today is the final day of the summit, and a lot of issues have been raised at the summit. Various sessions, which were industry specific, actually revisited the issues which should form a development plan showing possible timelines of how ideas and contributions made at the summit will be implemented. And so conversations are still ongoing at the moment. A plenary session is on. Of course, it's question and answer time. It's focusing on mitigating the impact of crisis and conflict. So questions from the audience to some of the panelists who are actually will be responding to some of the issues. And also, right after that, we've got another plenary which will be focusing on the ease of doing business. Talking about the ease of doing business, policies, regulations, and of course the legal framework, some of the issues that were highlighted in the last couple of days at this summit. So joining me on the program now to take a look at some of those sticky issues is the board of director, is Chidi Anya, who is on the board of FBN Holdings. He is also managing partner of Channings Law Firm, and he's a member, Joint Planning Committee on Mobilization and Funding of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. A good morning to you, Chidi. Thank you so much for joining me on the program this morning.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure.
So, a lot of things have been said, and I'm sure listening to me, you have a strong idea of what the issues really are. But for you, what are the sticky points?
First, I think we're all learning in Nigeria that government is a continuum. So it's important that we have policies that are implemented in full. It's also important that we train the regulatory authorities to understand what the issues they regulate are, and also teach the people that when laws are made, it's usually for all our good.
So with regards to law, you're a managing partner of Channings Law Firm, and one of the major issues I know that a lot of companies face, whether domestic or international, is somersaulting in laws that are made for their own good, which is what you said in the first place. But how would you say, in terms of the legal framework now that actually guides the principles for particular sectors, do you think those laws need to be revisited? Because some people say that those laws are already extinct.
Yes, the good thing about human beings, just like we are born, get older and all that, laws also are usually time-bound because things change, circumstances change. So it's important that from time to time, laws are reviewed. And it would appear from discussions with the Senate President yesterday that he gets the hang. And this government does get the hang that it's important that some of the laws that may now be a cake are urgently reviewed. And there is a sense of urgency in doing that.
But then you see, Chidi, a lot of people will agree with you on that point, but they will also say that in terms of making it specific to me, to my business in this case, how do you protect me from people stealing my ideas? We're talking about made in Nigeria, and everybody feels that it's a free market. So if I have an idea to for instance, fabricate chairs, you might decide that you want to also fabricate chairs, but you do it at a low quality, and then you steal my ideas, steal my hard work. How do you protect the producer, the manufacturer, and at the same time make sure that he doesn't shortchange his customers as well?
First and foremost, the beauty of it is that Nigeria actually believes in intellectual property and intellectual property protection. Therefore, in place are laws for patent, trademarks, copyrights, etc. However, in times past, people were not conscious of these things. Although they existed, there was not such a consciousness of that. In fact, I think historically, Microsoft, when they were coming to Nigeria, for instance, made part of its plan to create an awareness that it does have a trademark that would be protected, whatever it takes. And I think that in a long way taught most banks and many other people who use Microsoft software that there was need for licensing. So at times people do disobey because they don't know. But like they say, ignorance of the law is no excuse in itself. So you wait. First, there has to be a consciousness. And then perhaps what you need to do is some of the regulatory bodies should have timelines to deal with complaints when they come to it. And if the law that established them today does not provide for that, it may be necessary to go back and revise those laws to provide those timelines.
You talked about awareness. Whose responsibility is it to make, because a lot of people feel that as long as I'm registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission, and as long as the regulatory or agency who is overseeing that particular sector I'm registered in knows that I'm in business, then I don't have any issues. But whose responsibility is it to make you aware that you have rights that need to be protected at all times, especially if you have a trademark, to protect it from being infringed on?
Now, I think people know, for instance, when you have a trademark, I'm sure you notice at times you see something and you see TM in small letters. Internationally, when you have that little mark, what it does say is that this trademark is protected. So if you infringe upon it, there are liabilities that would follow. So first, the producer has a duty to disclose that it does have that trademark. And in fact, many things, for instance, some of these chairs that are made by Chair Center, for instance, have protection embedded in it. So if you were to go to China and make it, I'm just using an example, it's very easy for it to be shown that you are, if you permit me, a thief.
But you see, that's one of the issues again that was raised here, how to achieve competitiveness. Not all of these companies can operate on a competitive level, and that's what they're trying to get towards. So as you're trying to build yourself, to make yourself more competitive locally, and of course on an international scale, one of the issues is to look at how to build your brand. Who should they be talking to in terms of making sure that you legalize it, and in the process not break any laws or infringe on somebody else's property, even though you don't have a trademark?
Okay. Now, I think, for instance, it's important that we understand where we are, because Nigeria, like I mentioned to you before, Nigerians are very entrepreneurial people, and we are all anxious to make money because we understand what money does for everybody. Therefore, if they see something that is good, people will replicate it. However, in replicating it, we must learn that if somebody else has done it, I can improve on it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you could add value to the wheel. I hope I've answered your question.
So, in terms of now looking at the broader picture, what do you think are the governance and institutional conditions that are crucial to the Made in Nigeria agenda, vis-a-vis putting into perspective how the law is also supposed to protect and support this agenda?
I think first and foremost, the laws have to be in place, the regulators have to be informed, and the courts have to be treated with the dignity they deserve as an independent institution. Because basically, when all three work together, we all profit from it. If we think that I am better than you because I'm in one arm, or I'm less because you're in another, it may not help us. To get this done, we need the executive, we need the legislative, and we need the judiciary all working together. It is imperative. There are no shortcuts.
But then you see there are times when you take your matter to the judiciary, for instance, and you need for that particular case to be arbitrated on, and then you get delayed. For how long is the timeline for you? If you take a case, for instance, to the regulator and it's on, escalated to the courts, how long is it supposed to be? Some say 30 days, some say 90 days, but you see cases staying for so long, and at the end of the day, the person who's concerned gets tired and walks off.
No, I think actually our courts are evolving and are doing better, because basically there's this thing called the Anton Pillar order when a trademark is being infringed. It's an application you can bring ex parte to seize those goods. There's been a lot of symposia by the Federal High Courts, whose jurisdiction it is, to perhaps empower the judges more with knowledge on the importance of enforcement of trademark. But like all things in Nigeria, it's a work in progress. It's not yet perfect, but I think we've made substantial progress from many years ago.
So what's your own expectations going forward? Talking about progress, what timeline are you given in terms of most of the conversations that will be had here when the NESG as a think tank sits down to, look at the communique which will be presented to the president today? What's your timeline? What are you expecting to see either in the short or in the medium to long term?
I think basically most of the things we've thought about, there are things that must be done within the next 90 days. There are things that ought to be done beyond 90 days, maybe within a year. And there are things that we must do within the life of the government. And we know exactly what the remaining life of this government is. So I think that's what it is. We'll phase them out in that manner. Everything, like all things, when you're chasing something, you could start with the low-hanging fruits. Those are the ones that ought to be done quickly. If it's, for instance, you check your the CAC, for instance, which is the Corporate Affairs Commission, over the years has invested in educating its staff. They're a lot better today than they were at the beginning. Today you can go online to buy forms, etc. It wasn't always like that. When you come to the trademark registry, it hasn't quite made as much progress, but I hear government is looking into it to deal with it. When it comes to the Copyright Commission, it hasn't been, people haven't been as conscious of its role. But I think we're getting there. But it's also important that people who play a part in these industries create an awareness. And the government has a duty to do. South Africa, for instance, has a campaign about Buy South African. It's a massive campaign. They have offices in Nigeria now. The Trade Commission of South Africa does have that. The idea is that we must see that government is only there to create an environment where we'll all thrive. And the private sector has shown consistently all over the world that they are a bit more efficient because they are profit-driven. Government is not profit-driven. Therefore, its attitude to certain things are not necessarily the same.
So at this time, the government should focus on those low-hanging fruits. That's what it is.
Immediately, yes. Whether it's, for instance, training. You look at some of these establishments I've mentioned, or even like the Standard Organization, they must understand what the standards are, international standards, in detail. They must get and train their staff to be at speed in enforcing the highest standards. Because for us to make foreign exchange, for instance, with Standard Organization, with our products, to make foreign progress, we have to compete with international markets.
All right.
Just like China has shown.
All right, Chidi, thank you so much for joining me on the program this morning. Well, Business Morning will be back in just a bit, and we're focusing on another issue, which is taxation. Stay with us.